Greetings and welcome to our second episode of Business Glide here on Herman Manyora's channel. My name is Richard Mwenja. Now, agricultural sector in Kenya is crucial in improving food security, nonetheless ramping up income levels and reducing poverty. Now, to fully realize this potential, we need to ramp up our low productivity levels and therein make things such as irrigation play a crucial role in realizing such ripple effects. Now, to bring this conversation home, I'm joined by none other than young economist Kigen Kiplimo. Kigen, welcome on set.
Thank you so much for having me this lovely day.
All right. And viewers, today we'll also have a special focus on the role of National Irrigation Authority, their milestones so far, should there be any, and also systemic failures in their systems. And now, Kigen, to look at the broad perspective from the agricultural sector, we have seen, according to the 2020 economic survey, the agricultural sector realized mixed performance in a way that we see the volume of marketed produce going up, whereas the sector growth decelerating. Why the disequilibrium?
Actually, if you look at the whole agricultural spectrum, that is as you've just mentioned, the economic survey of 2020 that was released by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, you find that in the overall structure where you have agriculture, livestock and fisheries, it actually increased by, that is the overall output, it increased by 4.8% in the year 2020, which of course is an improvement, and it's something that Kenyans should be happy about. Notably from that, you would find that there were some sectors that really performed well and warranted that overall increase. So you find, for example, tea increased by 24%. And on the other hand, you also have sugarcane production. It actually increased by 47%. So it's actually a coincidence, a nice blend, you know. Tea and sugarcane as well. So that's pretty interesting. We also saw a dip when it came to, an 18% dip when it came to coffee. Another area that should probably concern us as a country is cut flowers. It decreased by around 15%. That is something that we really need to look into, because we saw in the years before that, in 2018, in 2020, in 2018 and 2019, we saw issues around flower companies that are in places like Naivasha, that is in Nakuru County, and any other places, you know, lamenting about many issues, most of them being, of course, electricity, which has been a big issue for people who are doing business in Kenya. But on the overall spectrum, if you look at the rebasing of the economy, the KNBS, they rebased the economy back to 2016. The last time they did a rebasing, it was in 2014, and the rebasing was based on 2009. Now, an interesting thing that our viewers should note is one, that agriculture, according to the previous rebasing, used to contribute 33% to Kenya's overall GDP. Now, after the rebasing, we find that agriculture is no longer the backbone of our economy. Rather, others would argue that it's now the femur, still a strong bone, but not the main one.
One of the many.
It's actually now contributing 20%. It has shed off 12%. There are a number of factors. I am looking at, of course, other sectors have contributed to the GDP. Their contribution has increased. For example, looking at something like ICT, in the previous decade, at the start of the previous decade, ICT, agriculture was actually 25 times bigger than ICT. But then today, agriculture is only 6 times bigger than ICT. So ICT is also increasing its contribution to the GDP. But then another thing that has made the contribution to GDP reduce is obviously funding. Agriculture is massively underfunded. If I look at the budget of the financial year 2021-2022.
Again, let me hold you on that. We are getting there. Now, sticking on that lane, if we are looking at the production of these high-value crops, this survey, the 2021, of course, showed, save for coffee and maize farming, a host of other stock of sugarcane and tea, the volume of marketed produce in that line really upscaled. And of course, it is argued that this is what propelled sector growth. Now, will you say, now that we are having a particular interest in National Irrigation Authority, that NIA, in partnership with affiliate government agencies in the State Department of Agriculture, that they should invest more in high-value crops, look at the loose strings in the market of, say, maize? We've had the maize crisis now and then. But remember, if you go years back, maize was the high-value crop that we were anchoring the growth of our economy on. should NIA now focus on looking at market loopholes in there so that every high-value crop doesn't suffer the same fate as what coffee and maize suffered in the 2020 economic survey?
That's very impressive.
All right.
Because of one thing, there should be a map out of actually products that are needed in Kenya. You know, you've mentioned the likes of sugar. We have a huge sugar deficit in Kenya. Actually, it's around 415,000 metric tons.
All right.
Let me start from the overall picture, right? You find that in Kenya, only 17% of the land mass is arable land. Is actually not arable land. Out of the 17% is actually land that can support rain-fed agriculture.
All right, true.
So 83% cannot support rain-fed agriculture. So, so irrigation, for this matter, these statistics demonstrates to us that irrigation we can't do without.
Absolutely.
It's something that must be there, you know, for the purpose of our food security. Now, if you look at the products that are farmed through irrigation,
true,
and their contribution to the overall food basket in Kenya, you find that products from irrigation, they actually contribute 18%.
All right. And
so there's still room for improvement on that.
On that front, yes, I agree, because their report actually showed that 3% of arable land in Kenya is under irrigation. Now, what has delayed NIA from now looking at this from a different lens and saying, hey, guys, this is where we need to anchor our strategy, our turnaround point. From 100%, 3% of arable land can support irrigation, can support actually agriculture. Why don't we do the 97% on irrigation? What has delayed NIA this far?
Interesting indeed. I mean, the NIA, I think they are doing to the best of their ability.
All right.
And let me tell you why. Firstly, before I move to any other point, allow me to go back to the point of funding, because it is critical indeed. As I said earlier, if you look at the budget for the financial year 2021-2022, the government has allocated 2.4% of its total budget to agriculture.
That's 60 billion, roughly.
In the previous year, it was around 2.2%. Okay? But then this is worrying. This is worrying because in 2014, there was something called the Malabo Agreement. Malabo, there was a treaty of which Kenya is a signatory, and it states that every government should spend at least 10% of their budget on agriculture. Now, some would say that agriculture is devolved. Now, let's factor in what county governments spend on agriculture in their budgets. You find that these for the financial year 2021-2022, it comes to around 3.2%. So that is way, way, way below the 10% mark, which we should be at least for us to sustain agriculture. And this is important because funding is everything. Funding is typically everything.
The exchequer might come on board and argue that in previous times we have allocated billions of money into agriculture, yet we've ended up with graft cases. So why the reason now increase the funding if the little we used to give them back then? I mean, we saw the dams collapsing. We saw irrigation schemes from institutional ones such as the Galana Kulalu, of course, stalled in midway. We saw there was a time where Tabere was also almost collapsing. Exchequer might come on board and say, hey guys, we are sticking to the 60 billion mark. No more funding.
Yeah, I mean, you've actually mentioned Mwea Tebere, and let me begin from that. Last week we saw that Mwea Tebere, they've reported that the water level is at 50% of what it's normally there. So we might face food shortage challenges when it comes to Mwea Tebere, because, you know, it's key for our viewers to understand that Mwea Tebere actually contributes 80% of the local rice production in Kenya. So it's a critical area. I know when Kenyans hear about Galana Kulalu, you know, it's a sad moment.
Absolutely.
I agree there was a lot of politics that was put into that, but let's help our viewers understand
but also the numbers were there.
Yeah.
The mismanagement
there
of
was
the funds.
There was huge mismanagement. So Galana Kulalu is a project started in 2014 by the Jubilee government. It's actually 1 million acres, right? And they said that let's start by doing a 10% model farm.
All right.
Sorry, not 10%, a 10,000 acres model farm. So they planted maize, they planted also other products in the 10,000. We've struggled to do the 10,000 acres. because there were issues with contractual problems with the contractor. We had contracted an Israeli company.
The Green Arava?
Yeah. So the contract ended up being cancelled in 2020, May 2020 last year. But the work had, I think the contractor had stopped working in 2018.
Yeah, he actually declared, the contractor Green Arava declared themselves bankruptcy.
Yeah, and that's when the National Irrigation Authority actually took over the Galana Kulalu project.
All right.
So the Galana Kulalu project, we've faced a massive delay because there's been a clip that has been going around of the deputy president saying in 2017 that by June, July 2017, Galana Kulalu would be producing 30,000 bags of maize every month, which of course did not turn out to be the case.
All right.
But I think Galana Kulalu is well on course with now the National Irrigation Authority in action there. They are now in the process of trying to find private sectors to do public-private partnerships because the government, there's no way they can till 1 million acres. Yeah. So it's for these guys to come in. But I just want to mention that I foresee a challenge. There might be a challenge because of the initial problems that they were with contractual arrangements with the Israeli contractor and the government. There were allegations by the Israeli contractor of corruption by government officials and authorities. So this might make, it might slow the uptick of the private institutions and investments into going into Galana Kulalu simply because of that stain.
Mm-hmm. Now, Kigen, there is a bone of contention here. We have seen projects such as the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme and, of course, the 1.2 billion, of course, Weiwei integrated phase 3 project, which was actually a product of a PPP with Italy. And how comes, still under NIA, some are failing, some are succeeding? The Weiwei project, 1.2 billion, massive success. Galana Kulalu, it was so much hyped, it's failing, and a host of several others. Why the imbalance in probably success rates?
I'll tell you, it's simply a mismanagement issue.
Under the same body umbrella?
It's simply a mismanagement issue. I mean, there's no way around it. And for me, I think also, we are fighting, the goal is to attain, to not be food insecurity, to attain food security.
Absolutely.
That is the ultimate goal, right? And this has always been my personal sentiments, that you don't just stop a project simply because of mismanagement. Okay, why am I saying this? It's because for a very long time as a country we have been living in what I call a guesswork mode. All right. Also. Last week, I think the week before last week, the president announced that drought has become a national disaster. Right. In February of 2017, he announced the same president, that drought is a national disaster. Going back to as far as May of 2011, President Kibaki announced it's a national disaster. So we have always been reactionary in our thinking, okay? Right. So the reason why I'm going to we shouldn't just cancel projects because it's a mismanagement, because this is when you have a strategic plan, like the NIA have a strategic plan 2019 to 2023, where they want to get the land under irrigation to 500,000, to 500,000 acres. Now, when you have such a plan, it's something that you're following through, and it's going to feed into other plans as well, because these are things that are supposed to feed into Big 4 and Vision 2030. So you don't just cancel the Aurora and Kimwarer Dam simply because there was a mismanagement. No, you don't do that. What will happen to other plans that are dependent on it? I mean, you fix the mismanagement issue, start with a new contractor and do it.
But then again, dating back to the NIA strategic plan, we see it a well-framed and penned plan running through 2019, 2023. And of course, there are medium-term goals therein. Yeah. But so less of that has been felt by the taxpayer. Yet it's the taxpayers who finance it. In as much as they generate the internal funding, say through the operation and management funds here and there, fees per se. But, I mean, most are still failing. Halfway into the medium term and none can be felt.
Actually, quite the contrary.
All right.
Not all are failing. You know, in Kenya, there's that temptation to always point things as if they are failing. But in actual sense, there is some good work going on. You know, I give credit where there is due. I mean, we've seen in the last couple of weeks that there is a Wikithuki irrigation scheme that is in Kitui County, was revamped.
True.
So it's not all doom and gloom. But I just want to state that actually NIA, the National Irrigation Authority, depends a lot on development partners, the likes of JICA, the likes of World Bank, you know, the likes of USDA. These are the people that actually chime in to make things happen. So the government needs to pull up its socks in as far as funding is concerned. But
the same NIA, the National Irrigation Authority, has been on the receiving end with regards to, they have been accused, I will use that word, they have been accused of coming up with new projects, yet some that already existing have collapsed midway. I mean, why don't we revamp the stalled one first before we now take up on new initiatives? In as much as we want to ensure this regional development across, at least each county has an irrigation scheme, those in the pastoralist communities, etc. But why not fix the current problem before now we take up on new initiatives?
Okay, so now let me start from a national outlook of irrigation so that we can narrow down and see where the problem is actually. If you look at the largest contribution to irrigation schemes, if I just process the numbers, there are these that we call, you know, community-based irrigation schemes.
Yeah, true.
Where they call them self groups. It's by mostly it's medium and smallholder farmers.
All right.
And actually they call themselves water users, irrigation water users association, something like that. There's a community. That's what they call themselves. Now, these are actually they're actually the biggest chunk of the irrigated land in Kenya. They contribute to 43%. There are 3,600 of them in Kenya. Then you go to now personal and commercial farms. You know, this, we are talking about the likes of Del Montes, you know, and Kakuzis of this country. They contribute 39%. The government actually feeds what comes in at 18%. These are now the public project, the likes of Galana Kulalu, Mwea, Pekera.
Hero, etc.
Yeah, so actually the government is just doing a small share, which is 18%. And the NIA, if you look at their mandate and functions, they are actually mandated to offer support to these guys, to actually, particularly to the medium and small holder schemes. And I think that's where the real work is. That's where the real transformation is. It's not really even at the 18% of government projects. And I'll tell you why. If you look at how the next stage of us moving agriculture, it will be through contractual farming.
Contract farming systems.
Contract farming. And a good example, so our viewers understand this, a good example is what BIDCO is doing with sunflower farmers, okay? Another good example is what EABL is doing with barley farmers in the likes of Makueni and the likes. So the best way for actually the National Irrigation Authority to approach this and improve food security in Kenya is actually to reach out to development partners as well as corporates, okay? So if they can go and talk to BIDCO, to these corporates, and then go to the farmers, they tell them, okay, the farmers, if I'm a farmer, I'm just a farmer in Baringo County. I don't have the money. I don't even have the credit to buy the pumps or water or anything. This company offers me the initial capital. Then I till the land, and we have a contract. Actually, it's not necessary. They should not even offer them, you know, the initial investment. What they just need to do is to offer them a contract, okay, that we will buy this sunflower or this whichever product.
Of course, major
at the end of this
legal
time,
framework that is.
Yeah, we have agreed the price and everything. So it's a contract, you know, it has to be signed, you know, and commissioned by an oath. So what happens is that you can actually use that contract to leverage and credit. You can go to a credit facility, a banks or the like, and you'll be able to get money to go and buy seeds and everything and till the farm. So contract farming is the way to go. And NIA should really facilitate that with the farmers, because the small and medium scale farmers are actually the largest chunk of those contributing to the agriculture, to the irrigated land.
And talking of the smallholder farmers, we've seen 78% of course, the food produced in the economy that we are actually feeding on is coming from these small-scale farmers. Now, despite attempts being there, such as now to do contract farming, etc., there is a crucial role in, of course, farmers accessing, of course, improved technologies, etc. And it's not just about the improved accessing. We also need extensive services in terms of training, etc. So what partnerships do you see NIA getting into so that to ensure, of course, a farmer in Trans Nzoia County, I'm from there in Moisbridge, so less of technology, yet we are the food basket region. If you go there and look at a maize plantation that is under irrigation, you'll probably spot one or two, and it's from the political elites. So less of technology has been advanced to these small-scale farmers, in as much as 78% of the food is from them. Why has it taken, NIA so long to realize this? Yes, of course, it's making measures, but why taking so long? And how can we reach out to them?
Tell you what, we are the novices of this world when it comes to do with data. Kenya and sub-Saharan Africa, we have a big problem when it comes to data. I mean, if you get to interact with people in the West, in America and the likes, and they have data on everything. Now, let me start from a positive point of view. Kenya has the highest internet penetration rate in the whole of Africa. We are at 87% of the adult population, which is very good, okay? And that is important in agriculture. NIA should look to partner with
tech firms.
With tech firms and actually startups which are coming up, because the startups are the one which are disrupting this market.
All right.
And a good example is we have, just to mention but a few, I mean, we have DigiFarm by Safaricom.
All right.
You know, the excellent products, they link you to the market and the likes. We have the likes of Apollo Agriculture, you know.
Yeah, true.
People who are doing really good stuff, you know, you can be able to track data, even from your phone about how much your cow has produced, how much, and the likes. You can even be able from that data to predict how much you'll get, leverage that on credit and the likes. So we have seen a lot of development. That area is very dynamic, very robust at the moment as we're speaking. So I think NIA should actually have their eyes out there to partner. We've seen actually county governments, they've taken a good step towards this. We've seen the likes of Wasingishu County, you know, signing MOUs with corporates and startups, the likes of Apollo Agriculture and the likes. And this is really helping farmers. Impressive technology is happening there. I think we are yet to see the best.
All right. And now we have seen aid partners such as the USAID. Some time back they came with this program, Feed the Future program, in which actually we saw farmers from across the region being supplied with, of course, solar-powered water pumping, of course, systems, which are actually solar-powered. And actually this translates to saving on cost, in as much as if we tell NIA to take on that trajectory, they might say right now we're experiencing, of course, high energy cost because of a rise in pump prices. But I think this is a new front that has been introduced by USAID. So do you see us capitalizing on this, or will you actually suggest that we go fully into, of course, solar energy in terms of now developing our irrigation systems?
Aid is good. Aid is good, Chief. But one thing, I am not a strong believer in aid. Okay, it's impressive efforts that are being done, you know, by the likes of USAID, and we're also having other faith-based institutions which are doing great stuff in as far as irrigation is concerned in Lodwar and all other parts of this country. But I think the buck lies with us as a people. We must be able to uplift ourselves. You know, for how long will we be at the mercies of other people? And as we conclude, there is something that I must mention that is very, very important. In as much as we are talking about agriculture and irrigation, I think we cannot escape the conversation on our fiscal performance, okay? Because as we've just been having this conversation, funding is an important aspect, you know, in the progress that is supposed to be made in the agricultural sector. But again, last week we saw that the governor of the central bank presented a report at the Senate and said that for every 100 shillings that Kenya collects right now, around 36.6 shillings is going to debt. By the time we'll be approaching elections next year, it will probably be hitting 50 shillings. And from that, the government is supposed to give 12 shillings to county governments, and then for development project, current expenditure. So I think things are not looking gloomy. I'm a cautious pessimist. I'm a cautious optimist. Things are not looking very good. I don't think much will happen in the agricultural sector simply because of our fiscal performance.
All right. And Kigen, just to wind up, we have seen our pastoralist communities, of course, being called regularly to, of course, diversify and get into crop production. However, they have been reluctant. And, of course, I support them in some way. How do you tell a pastoralist in Laikipia to diversify, yet he or she has grown up, of course, knowing my way of life is livestock. If I, of course, transit to another type of course, farming activity per se, of course, I lose identity, I lose touch with my culture, etc. Do we need a change in norm and tact? And also, figure in, of course, the place of banditry in here. Yes, you want them to come and develop irrigation systems, but case of course, rampant banditry attacks, etc. Yes, you develop my farm 5 acres, in 2 months I've fled the area because of insecurity. How do we now chip in?
Tell you what, you know, the issue of pastoralism to pastoralist communities is a cultural problem. It's not a problem per se, it's a cultural issue. Just the same way for communities which have been predominantly farmers, farming to them is also a cultural issue to them. So cultural issue, and it's not easy to demystify. You know, it's not you can't fix it on a mathematical formula that 1 + 1 will add to 2. There are too many other factors. There are emotions concerned to it. But I think with a lot of education, you know, with a lot of sensitization, you know, that you have to diversify for your own good, you know, for the sake of your food security as a community and as a household. That is very important. But again, I have to say that, you know, people have the freedom to choose whatever they want in this country. If you want to be a pastoralist, be a pastoralist, you know. It's enshrined in our constitution. You can't really box people to fit in one sector.
All right, Kigen, we have actually also seen erratic weather patterns, of course, affecting agricultural sector in several ways. Now, say for last year, we experienced, of course, a shortfall in terms of rains. And of course, this had ripple effects on the kind of produce we produced, perhaps why the decrease. Now, going forward, should we adopt more of course, greenhouse farming other than actually agriculture in as much as it might be on irrigation?
Yes, greenhouses is one of the things. But before I get to that, rains they did not, in some areas of this country, they did not fall as they were expected to, okay? And we also had a locust problem last year. So, you know, one didn't need to be an agricultural expert to predict that this year you'd have a food security problem in certain parts of this country. But again, you don't, as the Israelis and some Arab nations have proven to us, that you don't need rain for you to have crops.
Absolutely.
Okay? So a very key, and this is actually one of the pillars of the National Irrigation Authority, and they really need to do a lot of work there. Water storage, water harvesting and storage is very important, because you are able to harvest the water and store it for times that you don't have the water. When you come to greenhouse, that area has been very, very robust. We've seen actually the likes of Israeli companies coming into the country, farmers setting up greenhouses in 1/8 of an acre and the likes. Massive stuff happening there. I think the National Irrigation Authority should also venture to help farmers there, particularly small-scale farmers, because if I have 1 acre of land, for me, my perception is that, hey, a greenhouse is very expensive. How am I able to do this? And this should also come with contract farming, because financing is critical on that front. And greenhouse farming is actually the future. Some of the food, actually most of the food we are eating in Nairobi, particularly vegetables, tomatoes, onions, and the likes, they're coming from greenhouses.
And now, Kigen, just to wrap up, we have seen state authorities such as the Kerio Valley Development Authority, of course, coming on the brunt of course, several graft cases. These authorities, yes, they have taken milestones in of course, developing agriculture, etc. Of course, they were responsible for the setup of Aurora Dam, etc. But midway, we see graft cases coming up. And we're actually afraid going up, should we even start other agencies? Probably they'll suffer the same fate as KVDA. We still have some of its top management, of course, facing legal charge. How do we now deal with graft in these state agencies, such as now the KVDA, if we are really looking at, of course, attaining food security? We cannot, of course, joke with anything around that sector, because, okay, we survive on agriculture.
Yeah, I mean, agriculture is very important, because this is a place where it's like healthcare. I mean, if you miss on it, you're going to die. If you don't eat, you're going to die. That's certain. Okay? And I'm a straight shooter. There's no way around graft. There's only one way. People are taken to court. The case is determined. They go to jail. It's as simple as that. There's no way around it.
All right. All right, Kigen, thanks for all the time. Well, that's all the time we had today here on Business Glide. My name is Richard Mwenjo, and it remains clear and very crystal in minds of taxpayers out here that if we are to attain food security in Kenya, then that's one sector we cannot joke with. Until next time, see you soon.